The year was 1999. The Sega Dreamcast had already been out almost a year in Japan, which released November 27th, 1998. Dreamcast was the final video game home console that was manufactured by Sega, and it was released in North America on today's date, September 9th, back in 1999, marketing 9/9/99 release. And then it was later released over in Europe, October 14th of 1999. This was the first sixth-generation video game console preceding Sony's PlayStation 2, Nintendo's GameCube, and the Xbox from Microsoft. The Dreamcast 2001 discontinuation ended Sega's 18 years in the console market. There was a team led by Hideki Sato, which began developing the Dreamcast in 1997. In contrast to the expensive hardware and the unsuccessful Saturn, the Dreamcast was designed to reduce cost with the off-the-shelf components, including a Hitachi SH4 CPU and an NEC Power VR2 GPU. Sega used a GD-ROM media format to avoid the expenses of DVD-ROM technology. Developers were able to include a custom version of the Windows CE operating system on the game's disc to make the porting PC games much more easier, and Sega's Naomi arcade system board allowed nearly identical conversions of arcade games. The Dreamcast was the first console to include a built-in modular modem for internet access and online play. The Dreamcast commercial failure had been attributed to several factors, including competition from the PlayStation 2, limited third-party support, and earlier failures of the 32X system and Saturn having tarnished Sega's reputation. In retrospect, reviewers have celebrated the Dreamcast as one of the greatest consoles ever made. It is considered ahead of its time for pioneering concepts such as online gameplay and downloadable content. Many Dreamcast games are regarded as innovative, including games such as Sonic Adventure, Crazy Taxi, Shenmue, Jet Set Radio, and Phantasy Star Online. The Dreamcast remains popular in the video game homebrew community, which has developed private servers to preserve its online functions and unofficial Dreamcast software. So I kind of remember when this console did release. My uncle, he had a Dreamcast, and that was the first time that I saw it, the first time that I actually got to interact with it. And I just gotta say, from my experiences with it back in 99, 2000, and 2001, I was just blown away. I was already playing game consoles such as the PlayStation and the N64, and then you got the PS2, which was on the horizon just a year later in 2000. And this console just had some amazing graphics, amazing gameplay. It had a library of very, very solid titles. Some titles that were ported from the PlayStation or N64, and some titles that will later port onto consoles such as the PS2 and the Xbox from Microsoft. Now, I do have a few games that I remember. I don't have them on me. I do have a few games that I remember greatly playing on this console. I owned a Dreamcast a couple times myself, but sadly I don't own them anymore. But I was playing games like Sonic Adventure, Crazy Taxi, Resident Evil, Code Veronica, Guts Rage, Sword of the Berserk. I've played Soul Calibur on this thing, Blue Stinger. There was just so many great titles, even when it came to sports titles such as NFL 2K or NBA 2K. This really blew things out of proportion. And we're talking like not really like pixelated polygons, but it's like the graphics were just so smooth and textured properly. It's like we were moving into a new age of graphic detail and frame rate. We're talking about games that ran at close to 60 frames per second. That's how fast and smooth everything ran on your television screen. And then, of course, with the death of this console, which meant there wasn't too many sales for this console within a 2-year period, which was basically the lifespan of the console over here in the US, because we had the PlayStation that was just releasing, you had GameCube that came out probably around the same time, as well as Microsoft Xbox. But not only that, there was another thing that plagued its demise, and I wish I had one with me just to show you guys, but I did test it out when I had my Dreamcast, and that is pirating games. Yes, back in the day, it was easy to pirate a Dreamcast title to a regular CDR. And this was around the era where digital software such as Napster and LimeWire, Kazaa, everything popped up around that time in the late 90s, early 2000s, where not only were people downloading illegally music and movies, but there was also a way to copy and burn video game files from one disc to another. People have tried it with the PlayStation games, which of course had its own kind of lockout code mechanism on the disc. But the thing with Dreamcast is they never expected something like that to happen, and somebody somewhere, they duplicated a Dreamcast game, and voila, the copied game did play on the console itself. So the first batch of these consoles that have come out, there was no lockout chip for them, no lockout mechanism whatsoever. If you burned a copy of a game, let's say Sonic Adventure, and you played it on your console, guess what? You're in the market now. So not only was the sales down for the consoles probably, but I imagine the sales were down pretty much for the software as well. Let's say you had a friend who was up the street and they had a copy of Crazy Taxi, but you or your parents couldn't afford the $40, $50, $60 price for that game in stores. All your buddy has to do is get a stack of blank CDs, make copies of them, and either give them away for free to their friends or sell them at a flea market for half the price of what they go for in store just to make a profit off of them. And that seemed to be an issue right there. Not a whole lot of people really look at. They look at just more of like the sales and numbers, with the sales declining, and also with the rise of Sony's PlayStation 2 coming out in the market very well soon. But other than that, this console, it had a very strong and solid release. It had a strong library of games that people and gamers, they all come to know and love, and we all experienced a Dreamcast at one point in our lives. And I think, to me, this has got to be like the number one console on my top 10 list. And I love consoles such as the N64. I love the PlayStation. I love the Xbox. I love some of Nintendo's consoles. But I will say my top number one console has always been the Dreamcast. There's just something about that console. Even the thickness of that controller in my hands. That model controller was modeled from the Sega Saturn. And of course, that became the drive for controllers such as the Duke for the Xbox and so forth. So just a controller, that you held in your hand, and you placed the memory card unit inside the controller itself, and it had this little screen on it where you can pick it up, and you have saved games on there from Sonic Adventure and such. You could take it on the go with you. You can play little mini games on it on the go. It was such a fascinating system. And also, when you bought the console, it came bundled with a web browser. That's because, this console, it had an integrated modem in it for 56K, I believe it was, for dial-up. Dial-up was a big thing back in the day when it came to online gaming. So if you had one of those, you can either play games online, or you had the web browser where you can browse the web on your Dreamcast. So there was a bunch of other different third-party accessories like keyboards, mice, etc. So you could have your very own computer hooked up to your television. You didn't have to worry about getting up and going to the computer desk and getting on a computer and looking through the interwebs. You could just pop the disc in and sit back and relax on your couch and chair, and you can sit there and scroll through the internet from your device on your television. Now, there were other consoles out before that have tried that method, but I think this was probably one of the first to hit the United States, to hit North America, and it just did so much. So this console, it blew the market wide open, not just for how games were evolving, but how we were playing games, either single-player games or even playing online. This was an amazing console to come out in 1999, and here we are celebrating 25 years later for this console. What are you guys thinking about the Dreamcast? Did you have one? Do you have any favorite games that you played on this console? Let us know down below in the description section, guys. Anyway, that concludes today. Thank you very much for joining me today. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below if you guys have yet to do so. And until next time, I'll catch you in the next one.